Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going into the how of our fight, of our struggle, of our upcoming war. And I know that concept seems kind of scary, so don't worry YouTube, this all takes place in Minecraft. Nothing bad will ever happen, so you don't need to kick me off the platform. But yeah, how? Now, there's a lot of debate on this in the cesspit that is the internet, especially the, tactical internet. We've really let that fall, but there's a lot of debate on it. And I would consider myself to be kind of a historian, not a very good one, but I pay attention, I research, I try to learn as best as I can. And I also take a lot of people who are smarter than me, what they say, take that to heart, and try to learn that to be, better at what we're doing here. And there's, like I said, a lot of debate on how we would fight, how we would not win, but really just be able to be a substantial thorn in a side. And I've done a lot of deliberation on this, and I think I've come up with the conclusion. It's not going to be one front. It's not going to be one massive side versus another massive side of, the red-pilled good guys versus the evil government and blue-pilled bad guys. And there's going to be, clear battle lines, and, we're all going to have maps and Call of Duty score streaks, and everybody's going to go home in a week and, be fine. It's a lot more complicated, I think, in all reality, than what we care to realize. And so how do I think that'll be conducted? Well, there's going to be a lot of small fronts. There's going to be a lot of small fronts, armed groups, pop-up struggles, a 2-day war. Next week there's another 2-day war, insurgencies, things like that. I feel like it'll be very reminiscent of Northern Ireland and the Balkan Wars, kind of rolled into one. Just by the climate of the United States right now, and just kind of how those struggles played out. So obviously we're up against a much larger and stronger force, best force in the world, some would say. And they have a lot of technology that us as partisans and militiamen do not have, or do not have any counter devices to. So what am I talking about there? I'm talking about jets, I'm talking about tanks, I'm talking about long logistic supply lines, and things that need big booms to make them not exist. Obviously, I don't have an A64 Apache sitting in my backyard that you need to know of. So that kind of doesn't help. And I don't have an RPG-7 sitting in my room that you need to know of, which is definitely a really big hobble compared to other conflicts that we take inspiration from. So yeah, anti-tank weapons, not having them is probably our biggest weakness as a force or as groups. So what would that look like for us? How would we fight against a very armored enemy who relies on vehicles and things like that to fight? How would we fight against that? Well, we kind of can't. Unless if we get support from, I don't know, China or Russia or some other country that hates the government, I feel like we'd have to be willing to accept help from them. I feel like we'd have to be willing to join forces somewhat with them to receive aid in that capacity. If not, we're kind of screwed. I think we have to come to that conclusion. It's really how much we want it, how much we want to be free if it ever gets that bad. But yeah, without anti-tank weapons or without any way to defend against the air, I think we're kind of screwed. I know a lot of people bring up drones, but unlike Ukraine, we don't have a million Soviet RPG warheads just strapped to the bottom of Mavics and fly those around. So until we start manufacturing our own stuff, again in Minecraft, which, is possible, it can be done, it has been done, but it's not as good. And I would argue that's not good enough. I would say Molotovs would be your best bet. There's a tank rolling down the street. pop it out of a window onto a tank, but they're so armored nowadays, and it's so hard to do. This isn't World War II. Everything is advanced and it's harder. So how do I think we could combat that? Well, it's not with patrol bases. Not with patrol bases and chest rigs. It's not with $800 plate carriers and CQB classes. It's with grit, and it's with tactics. And what do I mean by that? Well, you're going to have to dig tunnels. We're going to be tunnel fighters. We're going to be tunnel rats. Conflict I should have mentioned is like Syria. If you watch CivDiv's videos, if you watch a lot of like combat footage from like the YPG, or even ISIS combat footage or Taliban combat footage, from their perspectives and their fights, because they did beat the United States, is that we need to dig tunnels. Dig tunnels, have large networks in the most rural, abhorrent places that the government's not want to get to, where we can still find ways to strike when we need to. So, yeah, a mountain is going to protect you from a bomb a lot better than your patrol bases. So we're going to have to be tunnel fighters. We're going to have to be tunnel rats. And on the same side of that, not everybody's going to be able to hide up in the mountains of Colorado or something like that. It's going to be a lot of urban fighting. So I think, like the IRA did, it's going to have to be a lot of hit-and-run tactics. You know, civilian plainclothes, grab a 12 mags and a chest rig and a gun that's been stashed under the basement for 20 years, fire onto a column, again in Minecraft, dome a few guys, throw it away, and run, or die. Either one. I mean, we have to be prepared to die. I think that's pretty well known. But, yeah, so tunnel warfare is going to have to be a thing. We're going to have to dig networks. We're going to have to find ways to coordinate and communicate and do that. So without a lot of the technology, without being, because even if we do find a way to get, like, I don't know, like a million RPGs shipped in from some post-Soviet country, even being able to train those and have the logistics without the, the constant surveillance that we're already under, much less during wartime, you're not going to have a second of privacy. You're going to be watched all the time by drones or satellites or something. It's going to be watching you. Being able to ship those to, every free hand in the United States, it's not going to be easy. So we're going to have to just be pesky. We're going to have to hit and run, either hide in, buildings or streets or, all that, or hide in tunnels and places where they can't get you. We're going to have to do that. I think that's really our only way. And we're not going to be launching assaults on Washington, D.C. We're not going to be stealing Apaches and having some retired Army dude fly us in and, jump off and do CQB and, steal frag grenades from dead corpses, which we can do, but not en masse. And, set up our own government in the first week and, take everybody out. It's not going to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to fight for years upon years, if we can make it that long. We're all going to die, every single one of us, probably in horrible, horrible ways. And we're going to have to be a thorn in the side of whatever force we're fighting until eventually they give up and leave us alone. Or they don't, and they give up and leave our kids alone. That's going to be our only way around it. Really, that's it. It's not going to be a victory. It's not going to be a quick victory. There's going to be a lot of horrible things happening. I mean, innocent people are going to die. Towns are going to be burned again in Minecraft. Mass graves are going to be filled. It's going to be a lot of, like in the dark days of Revolutionary War, 1780, you killed my brother, I kill you. It doesn't really matter at this point. Everybody's just killing everybody. They're going to be, if you have a grievance with somebody or a different group of people, they're going to be gone. It's just what's going to happen. Once it hits the fan, it's without rule of law. There's going to be a lot of people in the crossfire, and I feel like keeping your morals and, keeping your faith, there's no atheists in foxholes, but, keeping your morals, keeping your faith will help with that, but you're going to have to do some dirty things. You're going to have to do some dirty things to some people who probably don't deserve it. And you're going to have to do that enough that eventually whoever you're fighting is going to say, all right, this is too much, we need to stop. You need to be brutal enough. You need to be vicious enough. You need to be violent enough, and you need to be terrifying enough that they will have to stop, or they're going to keep going until you're dead, and you will die knowing that you did your best. That's really our only way to do it. And so, again, with that, how do we feel that? Well, logistics is not exactly on our side. Amateurs use tactics, professionals use logistics. That's a quote I was thinking of. And logistics is a very complicated subject for us trying to do it. Because we can't have, see whatever cargo planes flying in Burger Kings to us wherever we need to. We're not setting up big old fobs. We're not controlling cities. We're going to be pretty screwed. We're going to be starving. We're going to be dying of thirst. We're going to be very malnourished. And what's going to happen is, A, we're going to have to use up our food stores. I understand that a lot of people watching are probably preppers. Or if not, I'm sure they understand prepping. And I feel like that's kind of underappreciated. I don't know if that's the word. Underused, whatever. Not as done as much as it should have. Part of preparing. People will be buying, thousands of dollars worth of gear. I'm guilty of that myself. But have no way to filter water or survive without power because it's going to be cut off. Or, get their own food. So being able to farm our own food, use up our stores. We need to be collecting stores now as much as we can while we can. We'll be collecting as much of that stuff, food and water and MREs and, dehydrated food and seeds as we can now. We need to prepare in that aspect. And once we start using them, we need to find ways to, communicate with farms and people sympathetic to your cause. Be able to cultivate and take the food that you need to, supply your people. We're going to have to do that. And it might get a little bit messy, like I said. It might get a little bit brutal. You might have to take some food from people who don't want to give it to you. You might have to commandeer a few things. You might have to. It might happen. You never know. I don't think a lot of people in the more bushcrafty side of it say that we can really hunt to do it. I don't think hunting is going to be able to supply what we need. I think it's going to be you're going to be eating a lot of like rice and corn. Not a lot of wild game. Thought I'd throw that in there. But yeah, rice, corn, dehydrated food, twice filtered water, and bottled water from 2012 is what you're going to be drinking. Because you're not going to be able to walk into the supermarket and, buy whatever you need and stick it in your gray man backpack and walk back to your house, put on your Pharaoh Concept stuff, and do heckin' CQB with the boys. You're going to starve. Food's probably going to be rationed at that point. It's going to be controlled a lot. Government's probably going to be, having food checkpoints. They cutting food stamps, but it's the only way you can get it. It's going to be controlled. It's going to be regulated, so it's going to be hard to fuel that, along with ammunition. Ammunition is probably going to be one of the hardest aspects, and I'm going to have to really lean into my belief that we're going to have to align with some other country to provide us that. I know arms manufacturers like, Palmetto State Army, probably, I hate to name drop, but arms manufacturers and will probably supply, weapons to a cause that they agree with, or ammunition. I'm sure some plants somewhere. But I don't think that'll last too long. I think the government will bomb those out and shut that down. So it won't last very long of having, readily supplied and made ammunition. You're going to have to, A, survive off of your stores and your preps and all the ammo that you hoard. Your tens of thousands of rounds. You should hoard that. You should eventually use that because you're going to need it. But I feel like we're going to have to align with some country that can manufacture it and ship it into us discreetly and divide that out amongst the populace. Would be our logistical way of doing things. Same with medical gear. I feel like medical gear will be easier to get, though. Hospitals are still going to exist. They're still going to be manufacturing that for every side, so there's that. But yeah, it's going to be messy. A lot of people are going to die in Minecraft, but a lot of people are going to die in very brutal ways. Like I said, mass graves are going to be filled. Innocent people are going to die on both sides. It's not going to be pretty. I hope and pray that it never happens again in Minecraft. But if it does, we're gonna have to do some pretty bad things. But, you know, tunnel fighting, Molotovs, and IRA style, pop a few off and melt back into the crowds fighting. That's really our only ways, because we're so limited with the technology that we have, the technology that we're against. It's gonna be what we're gonna have to do. So that's just my thoughts on it. I would love for you guys to comment down below and tell me, you know, do I think I got this right? Do you think I got this wrong? What is your opinion? What is your thoughts, your philosophies? What is your solution to some problems? Anything I missed, I would love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.